Hallelujah. Flights have resumed after the FAA suffered a massive computer outage that grounded flights across the country. More than 9,000 flights were delayed and at least 1,000 more were canceled. It is the second major air travel disruption in less than a month. NBC's Tom Costello has all the details.
Government sources tell NBC News the FAA system issues began to surface yesterday around 3:30 in the afternoon. The FAA switched to a backup system, then returned to the main system just before midnight. At 4:45 a.m., the FAA rebooted the system, but it took time for the critical data to reload. NBC News has now learned today's problems were caused by a corrupted file. It was just last week that air traffic in Florida ground to a halt after a different FAA computer glitch. Over the holidays, Southwest Airlines suffered a major meltdown, affecting roughly 1 million passengers. Now, the U.S. travel industry says the country's aviation infrastructure is in immediate need of an upgrade.
Joining us now, a true American hero, Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger, who, as you recall, safely landed a U.S. Airways flight on the Hudson River 14 years ago this weekend. I will never forget watching it live next to my 2-year-old son, thinking I was part of a movie, but no, it was real life, and that real life hero is with us. Captain, I am so glad to see you again. When anything happens in the air, you're the person I want to talk to on the ground. So please explain to us, what exactly was this system that failed today? Why is it so important? And how in the world does it work?
Stephanie, it's good to be with you, and thanks for calling on me. It's an important system because it's the system that provides NOTAM information to pilots. And that's something about conditions at airports, runways, lighting, and navigation aids. Anything that should be working that's not, anything that's not normal, pilots need to know about on their flight. And by federal aviation regulation, pilots may not depart if they haven't had a chance to review all that information. That's what made this a big deal. It was a big failure.
But the FAA says it was a corrupted file. That's what was to blame for the system collapse. I don't know. I sort of think that it's really worrisome that just one damaged file could cause this amount of massive chaos.
That's just an indication of how many of our critical systems that we depend on every day, in some ways, are brittle and fragile. And that's why I've been saying for a long time, after our experience on the Hudson River in 2009, that we need to make our systems, our technology as reliable, redundant, and resilient as we can. But in the end, it's human beings who can really be resilient and solve problems they've never seen before. And so the FAA, I'm sure, began to work very hard to recover from this. When I say that these systems need to be reliable, that means they don't fail often. When I mean that they are redundant, is that they have effective backups that can be applied immediately. And when I say resilient, it means that they can recover quickly to normal operation. And those qualities were obviously not effective in this case. It's also important that we not have single points of failure on any of our systems or common points of failure that seems to have happened in this case. In other words, the primary system and the backup system both apparently had the same corrupted file.
Well, it shouldn't work that way. How old is this technology? Clearly, it sounds like, at the very least, it's time to update or upgrade it.
I think it's an indication of how many systems at every major organization, every government agency is in desperate need of upgrades. We need to resort to give the resources necessary to do those upgrades. I've been saying for a long time, there's a strong business case for making those kinds of quality and safety investments. It's always better and ultimately cheaper to do the upfront investment to avoid the negative outcome rather than trying to fix the damage later. And when lives are lost, there's no way to repair that damage.
Is the reason
the right thing to do is to make these investments up front. But it's hard to do.
Have we not made these investments because nobody's lobbying for it? Right? When there's an issue on the business side, we know every major airline CEO is in Washington saying, we need money, we need help. But when it's the system, when it's the infrastructure that breaks down, there's not really anyone banging down the door of the White House. And that's what we actually need most.
Well, we have to have two things exist simultaneously in any democracy to solve complex problems: the public awareness of it and the political will to act. And those two things must happen simultaneously. And those are perishable commodities that only last for a period before we move on to the next shiny object. So I think that's just one of many reasons why it's so hard to get the leadership, the Congress, to appropriate the funds for FAA to make the upgrades that they need to make.
Public awareness and political will. You say it so clearly, it sounds very simple. But of course, we both know it is far, far, far from that. Captain, I'm so glad you joined us tonight. It is always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for everything you do. Captain Sullenberger.
You're very welcome. Hopefully we can move this needle forward a little bit.